let's look at the pandemic and what this, changed into the mobility landscape. So what did we learn from the pandemic? How did our mindset change here? And maybe Mike, you can start. How did you experience the pandemic?
Well, from a broad perspective, from the transportation side, at least in the United States, because I think there's a lot less public transportation. It's a lot more individual. The roads were pretty empty for a year or so. It was very interesting to see how people adapted to being at home, and then now it's starting to come back quite strong. As far as an industry is concerned, we never really stopped. The vehicles that we're parts of really never stopped being produced by our customers. So we were trying to work remotely and still keep our factories running, which was a real challenge. And the big challenge moving forward is just that the workforce never really came back. A lot of people stayed home. And so now we're trying to keep up with large volumes and not many people to make parts. So that's the biggest challenge right now. But then also we have the transition to electrification, where we're trying to figure out how we fit onto those vehicles and work with our customers to get what they need and innovate somewhat remotely. But my team's we have equipment, so we were allowed to be here. But most other people outside of the hands-on people stayed home. So it's an interesting time, and we'll see where it goes.
How is working remotely when innovating? Was there a change? Was it difficult for the people not meeting face to face? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my team, since we have to be hands-on with what we're doing. So they were allowed to come in, but had to isolate and take precautions. But for someone like me and people that were managing it, we were at home on Teams meetings, like kind of like we are now, and just trying to make sure we kept the priorities straight and kept people moving forward and met the timelines that were necessary. And I think by and large, people did a really, really fantastic job. So, my team is mostly, I call them kids, but they're a lot more tech savvy and able to utilize those tools that dinosaurs like me aren't so good at. So,
yeah. Jay, what do you say? Like the pandemic, of course, it was a huge event. Where did you see the impacts now and for the future?
Well, the pandemic showed us as first our limits. It showed us, are we prepared or not? It was not the first pandemic, it's not the only one, and it will not be the last one. So here, any kind of findings, any kind of how can we proceed in the future are, of course, a necessary lesson and are welcome. The thing is that, how Mike already said, we've seen empty roads. We've seen, for example, these famous pictures that Venice became completely, unpolluted. When you've been able to see through the water, the ground. What we've seen after the pandemic is how fast we can pollute it again. The necessary shifts in the transportation itself that are required to fight the climate change, to somehow deal with our next future, is of course that public transportation, which is necessary, started to be empty. When people had to go somewhere, they've been using more intensely their private vehicles. But, remote work, we'll see. This whole thing around the necessary infrastructure. When you've seen, for example, in homeschooling, the children sitting in the snow in the garden because the connectivity was in the garden the best, being completely covered by sheets and so on, simply to participate on school. This is as well something that needs to be repaired for the next future. The afterwards implications were quite interesting to see how this emptiness of the streets, how switching to alternatives now start to recover again. But with the whole supply chain issues, with going down with your production, with what came after the pandemic, semiconductor shortage, now the war, when raw materials are being, let's say, not so available or not for the prices that we've used to have. Here we see that, for example, the waiting times, if for an average German premium, you wait something around 18 months. So the people started to shift in their own behavior, in their own consumption. So as well, some kind of minimalism, pandemic-induced minimalism, came onto the surface when your closet is full of stuff and you cannot wear it. So that you start to focus on quality instead of quantity.